Hi everyone, it's Roger and James here from the What's on Disney Plus podcast. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about quite a few different things. We're going to be talking about the possibility of adding sports into Disney Plus. We're going to be talking about the House of Disney Plus promotion that they're running right across Europe. We'll also be talking about more launches of Disney Plus, and we're also going to be sharing our thoughts on Ice Age, the Adventures of Buckwild, the Book of Boba Fett, and I'll also be sharing my thoughts on the upcoming Hulu Star original Pam and Tommy. So there we go. So quick bit of housekeeping before we go any further. If you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe. You can find us here on YouTube. And as of today, we just went over the 60,000 subscribers. So a huge thank you to everyone that's subscribed here on YouTube. And also you can find us on all the podcast platforms as well, because just as many people listen to us over there. Before we go any further, you can become a Patreon or YouTube channel member to help support us, which helps pay for all the hosting fees and all the bits and pieces. So a big thank you to Sarah, Andrew, Elliot, Jacob, Caleb, Red Mars Man, Aero G, Andrew, Cody, Darren, and Lauren. And then over on the YouTube, it's a big thank you to Jay Blue, Dana, Ricky, Dave, Adam, Mahad. We've also got Ben, Raphael, My VCR Still Works, Bina, Joshua, Dawn, Martin, Jeremy, and Sarah. Thank you very much for all of your support. It just makes a massive impact. Quick note to say, there is no live Q&A this coming Sunday on the YouTube channel. There's going to be a pre-recorded one because I'm having a couple of days off. So it's going to be good. So, but we got lots to talk about. A lot of stuff I didn't imagine we'd be talking about this time last week. A lot of news, a lot of great stuff. I'm going to start off with the fun one. That's definitely a big one. Percy Jackson has now been officially greenlit. Uncle Rick went on to internet this week and confirmed that the series is now underway, and I believe it's set to come in, I think, next year. But they've been doing a lot of casting, loads of bits and pieces. They're going to be using not necessarily the volume that they use for the Mandalorian, but they also tend to use I think they're going to be using technology like that. But what do you think about sort of Percy Jackson officially happening?
And it's good to finally have the official news. I mean, we've been following this one for a very long time, mostly through updates from the author.
He's been really good at that.
Complaining about the original movies and saying how much better this process has been so far. Disney actually seems to be listening. We'll hope that maintains the way they do things. If they mess it up with him again, I don't think we'll ever see another shot at it, because this is his second run through.
And it's a lot of time. I mean, it's kind of strange because, I mean, they first announced was back at the Investors Day. I mean, now we're talking, 14 months ago? And he's been working really hard. I mean, he's doing other TV series and movies for Disney Plus and Netflix and stuff. But there's a lot of work going on. And it shows you how much work goes in beforehand. And on one hand, finding out, announcing stuff in advance and being open about everything is great. I think he's helping keeping expectations right, especially with a younger audience. I think that's a key thing that he's doing, because I think there's a lot of kind of thing. A new series is coming. Yeah, when's it coming? Tomorrow? The day after? The day after that? We haven't even got the script. Yeah, but it'll be ready by next week. And it's like, no, he's being very, and I think that's good with a younger audience, being very transparent with them about how long the process is going to take.
I think that's just good in general, too. People have very odd expectations on how long it takes to create a television show or a movie. And you announce something and people are like, where is it? It's 2 years later. It's like, no, we're still working on it, especially if it's an FX-heavy show, which I imagine Peter Jackson probably will be, at least in terms of the age range it's looking at.
It's also, I mean, it's like the Mandalorian season 3. I've had some people go, well, why can't we have that after the Book of Boba Fett? Well, they're still filming it. Yeah, but that's fine. Yeah, it's a good thing. I know I can turn around these podcasts in about an hour or so, but the Mandalorian's a little bit tricky. They can't do it all live. Just do it.
You don't have to do CGI fight scenes between the Razor Crest. You don't have to add in.
If I did, to get it done in an hour, or you're going to have a little bit of paper coming up in front and some cardboard cutouts.
I mean, that could be entertaining, but yes.
I'm just doing the new Superman movie. There we go.
I would do the Superman song, but we'd get a copyright strike.
Yes,
so
good. But yeah, so it's good. I'm really looking forward to this. This is exactly what I think Disney Plus needs. Some more fantasy stuff and just something fun that's not Marvel and Star Wars. We need more of this. And I'm really looking forward to this one. This one should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I believe neither of us have ever read any of the books. I haven't seen the previous movies, so I'm
I've not.
coming in pretty blind on it.
Well, I've never seen the movies either, and I've actually decided. I'm deciding I'm going to come into this one blank. I've decided I've gone this long. It really isn't going to matter now. I might as well go in and be. Be completely like, okay, guys, this is your story. You're going to tell me, and it's and sometimes that helps because then you're not having preconceived notions of what it is.
I've tried to read the books a couple of times, but I have a hard time reading stories written in first person, which at least the ones that I tried were in that. But the concept is something that I really enjoy. You know, a lot of us really love those old mythological figures, and having this nice little follow on to that with apparently a very rich universe that people have grown to love over the years. It's a sprawling series. I don't even know how many books there are. There are tons of them. So
I think there's like 5 main core stories, and I think the idea is if this first season is a success, they want to turn like each book into a series. There's a lot of spin-off books and like tie-ins and stuff, but generally I think it's just a five movies is a 5 series. But yeah, so this just looks like it's gonna be a good one.
Yeah, looking forward to it in next week when it drops.
Yes. Right, we also got so we've got a lot of sports stuff. And I'm gonna just slightly change up first in terms of Disney also announced this past week that they're going to be launching Disney Plus in 42 countries across Europe, Middle East, and Africa this coming summer, and also in 11 more territories. So in around about 50 plus countries and places. So that's quite a lot of places. You know, you got like, as I said, countries like South Africa, Morocco. You've also got sort of Kuwait. You've got Greece, Egypt, Bulgaria. No word yet on like Vietnam or Philippines because I know they're desperate to get it over there. But this is going to be a big launch. I mean, we're really it feels like things are starting to kick up after the holidays have all kind of gone over. They're bringing new people in to run the place, new groups, and now getting ready for the upcoming quarterly results and stuff. But 42 countries will drastically increase the reach of Disney Plus globally.
Yeah, every country they can add is more people, and I'd also hope that they'll start pulling media from those places as well and expanding them out as we've talked about in the past. Obviously, they did not talk about that at all in this press release, as far as I know. But the more places they have it, the more chances we have of expanding the library with content from whatever region they're in. There's not too much to say about it. Just we're glad that more people will have access to it.
Interestingly enough, it was confirmed in the press release that they're getting Star. They're getting access to all of the general entertainment, which again is just flowing out the idea of they're drastically the rollout of Disney Plus with including Star in all those countries. I mean, it's already outnumbering countries without Star, with Star than without. But that's the kind of the standard version of Disney Plus now. So we're definitely seeing a difference there. But also, like you say, they're making this big content group for international content, and they're going to be making more. And hopefully as well, now with that and Disney Plus being in more regions, we will hopefully start seeing much better global rollouts of content, because it's like the bigger it gets, the more of a juggernaut it's coming. It's like, okay, we just want to need to launch it globally rather than having if you're releasing stuff all over the place, the more countries there are, the harder that gets. You want to get more things interconnected and stuff.
And also, if you're in one of the countries that hasn't come to it yet, like you mentioned, Vietnam and the Philippines over there, it's got to be frustrating be like, oh, we've got these 41, 42 new countries getting it, but why aren't we?
Yes.
Let's get it wrapped up.
The only thing with that one is they're planning, I think it was 160 plus countries by the end of next year. And with these 41, it will only put them at maybe about 110 or so. So still a lot more countries to go, but it's a massive expansion, which will really help keep shareholders happy because the numbers are going to just continue to go up. So that's good news. I mean, just more people getting access to Disney Plus is great. Now, to tie in with that one, then we've got a little bit of sports news. And now, generally, sports is something that we've not really spoke about too much, and it's not really been high on our radar. But we've had multiple stories this week regarding sporting stuff. So up first, Here in the United Kingdom, and I'm going to bring this one up first off, just to give you guys an idea, especially internationally stuff. So obviously, if you're on the audio version, I will explain what's going on. So here on Disney Plus here in the UK, we have got a lot. We've got a little sports documentary section, and in here we have got a mass amount of ESPN documentaries. And also some Star ones like that one word Firenoid. So you got loads of different things here. So you got American football, basketball, and wrestling, all kinds of bits and pieces of NHL. And they've been adding new like ESPN documentaries constantly. I mean, I think just this week here on Friday in the UK, we got like Playing for the Mob, Trojan War, Youngstown's Boys, the Book of Manning. So we got a few this week, even just in the UK, and Australia and New Zealand are set to get a load of those documentaries in the coming weeks ahead. But what was really interesting and a complete random surprise was when Free dropped onto the United States. Now that was definitely a bit of a different one. You know, we're not used to seeing ESPN in there. They got Dion's Double Play, The Book of Manning, and also Four Falls of Buffalo. Yeah, sports content and documentaries dropping in on Disney Plus in the United States was not on my bingo card for the week. Obviously, you've got the Super Bowl coming up, so I think those ones are interconnected with them. I'll be honest, I didn't realize that until a few people had mentioned it, because it's like I don't know football or American football that much other than playing Madden, and so there could just be a connection with the Super Bowl. So that could be one connection. But then also we had a tweet at us this morning saying that, you know, there's some code or something going on with the sitemap on Disney Plus's website, which now is kind of going off to a ESPN event. It doesn't go anywhere. It's nothing there, but it's similar to the technology that they've been using, or the links and stuff that they use on Star Plus in Latin America. So this is just, I mean, I've literally just put together a pretty big article and kind of opinion piece this morning about them testing. So this one came through Houston. He sent over some information on his social media this weekend, and just adding in, you know, just the idea of adding in live sports into Disney Plus. Not only that, the WWE officially announced that they've got a deal with Disney Plus Hotstar in Indonesia, and tonight for us, they're going to be getting the first live event, which is the WWE Royal Rumble, and then they're going to be getting access to the weekly shows like SmackDown and NXT, and they'll be getting access to like future premium events like WrestleMania, SummerSlam stuff. Now I am a big WWE fan, and this set a lot of people like going, well, hold on a minute, what's going on here? And even the big trades have been saying, you know, we're expecting more announcements regarding this stuff. And it's basically just this week of going, hold on, export stuff into Disney Plus in the US, more stuff here, WWE in Indonesia, live sports, like some coding changes. There's some stuff going on. So what do you think of all of this stuff?
I think it would make sense for Disney to be moving into that arena. And neither of us are particularly big sports guys. We've each got our individual sport or two that we watch, and then not much else. In fact, I didn't realize the Super Bowl was happening until work came out and said we had a moratorium coming up on changes being made because of the Super Bowl weekend. It's like, oh, I guess that's coming. All right. Which is funny because it overlaps with the Olympics moratorium that I already knew about. So I don't know why you're calling this out specifically, but okay. And so, yeah, that's the level that we're at. We're not saying that people shouldn't enjoy the Super Bowl or anything. It's just we don't follow it. But
I'm more interested in the trailers.
Which
I watch the adverts,
which I'll watch on YouTube after the fact. Yeah. But it would be a big mistake to write off sports. Sports are huge, whether it's, you know, Premiership football over on your side, American football on this side, baseball,
cricket in India.
Cricket in India is. I know more about cricket in India than I probably do about Super Bowl, because I have Indian coworkers, and it's always something that they're talking about.
Well, it's also just, I mean, even on like the quarterly results, I mean, the Disney Chiefs, they talk about it in every, that's that important to Disney Plus Hotstar in India. It gets brought up all the time of how important that is for them.
Cricket is huge. And even moving slightly outside of what we'd think of traditional sports, like the F1, Formula One racing has been huge, NASCAR over here. So if Disney can get those into their services, live or otherwise, even just documentaries, it brings in a lot of interesting content that people really do want to have. Now, if you can get the live content as well, you've got people turning on Disney Plus or Star or whatever throughout the entire week just to watch these shows, starting with WWE and maybe moving on to the bigger stuff. That's a huge win for Disney, and I'm sure that they would love to expand this the way people are speculating they want to.
Well, I mean, from my point of view as well, of like here in the UK, I mean, we've got Hotstar is still running. In the US they closed it down. The sports went over to ESPN Plus, and all the like Indian content went on to Hulu. So it's still running here, and they've got access to a lot of sport, cricket, and esports, etc. We also still have ESPN Player, which is a streaming service which has like NCAA basketball, NHL games, the X Games, and a few bits and pieces. I mean, the fact that it's called ESPN Player and it covers the whole of the Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and the countries vary depending on what they've got. Some of them have got basketball and baseball and stuff. It's like, okay, so that's a big area with this really weird, old-fashioned app that there's only got like a few thousand followers. It's like consolidation of these streaming services is going to be a key thing. There are some issues with ESPN legally. We've kind of got problems, like different countries have got different deals. Like here in the UK, a deal with the BT Sports is coming up. There's issues in Canada. There's lots of little issues, but it really opens up the door that if they started going into sports, it could drastically change things. Now, I've been a bit like, if you'd asked me a week ago, I'd have been like, or even with the WWE news, it's a bit like, well, that's why they got the Disney Plus Hotstar app, because it's got the live sports built in, but Disney Plus doesn't have it. Disney Plus doesn't have it all built in because it's not there. And that's why they've got Star Plus in Latin America, because they needed the sports stuff integrated in the app, which they couldn't do everywhere. And then it's like the next day I said that, it's like, yeah, the stuff being found inside the coding, and like, okay, things are really starting to unravel here. And it's like, on one hand, it's like, I would have always thought, well, ESPN Plus would have made more sense to just launch globally. That would have made more sense. Keep it separate, because it will keep the costs down. But then you're looking at what's happening with the other streamers. Amazon, Paramount Plus, Peacock, they're all off. Discovery Plus will be bringing in like Euro sports and stuff into HBO Max when that gets done. There's gonna be sport in nearly every streamer, and suddenly then you're like, yeah, if you want to have one house of Disney Plus, you're gonna need content. And you've got all this stuff here. You're paying millions out on billions of money on sports licensing. Use it. You're paying for this. You might as well use it. And yeah, I am under the illusion, and I would not be at all surprised. It might not happen this year. But we're seeing steps. We're seeing steps of stuff rolling in, and I wouldn't be at all surprised. It might not come next month. It could be months away. It could be a year away. It might not be happening until the Comcast and Hulu is sorted out. But there are steps being made. You can see it happening. You can see it unraveling at the minute.
And they want it to happen as well. I think consolidation is going to be the name of the game for the next couple of years. You mentioned the Hulu discussion, and the ESPN app, at least on the state side, has always been kind of like the black sheep of the family. It's there. You can get the bundle that has all three of them, but otherwise it tends to be forgotten quite a bit. But if they can start pushing it, if they can start getting more and more live events happening on that app, it raises the profile of the company quite a bit. And then they may want to move that app into the main Disney Plus app at some point. I'm speculating there's no information about that at the moment. But
also, I was going to say, like, unlike with Hulu, the ESPN stuff is actually probably easier for them to implement, especially like because it's they've got full control. They've got full control of the US, and it's quite cheap. I mean, ESPN Plus is not a huge expense. It's like $6-7, and then they can do pay-per-view events, like for UFC and stuff. But yeah, there's a big market here, and it's a different audience. This is not this is a very different audience. I mean, I always think, like, to me, when I'd go to Disney World and I'd see like the ESPN place at Broadwalk or the ESPN Worldwide of Sports, or even being in the middle of Times Square, and there used to be an ESPN stuff up on the window and bars and stuff. And I think they've just closed down the one in Disneyland. I think they're renovating a new area there where
it was like over by the Earl of Sandwich and stuff, which I think that whole area is down at the moment.
But yeah, so the ESPN is a major brand, and I think on one hand, had it, the WWE announcement at the beginning of the week was one thing. The fact that they added 3 titles onto the US yesterday really just was like, oh, okay, that's change. In the UK, you could say, well, they've got Star, but it's like the US, wow, that's a little bit of a shift.
And I did think that you're right in speculating that's probably a bit to do with the Super Bowl, but it's also kind of a test. Do these do all right on the Disney Plus platform? Is Dad going to load up Disney Plus so he can watch the Peyton Manning, or I think it's the whole family, that particular sports documentary, things like that, or was it wasted effort because he still thinks of it as the app that you throw Frozen 2 or Moana on for the little kid and keep them quiet for 3 hours?
They are gonna need much more than 3 documentaries. They're gonna need to put some considerate effort into doing it. But yeah, I mean, it's suddenly the concept of a ESPN hub suddenly now, like, that could be something. It might not. We could be completely going in the completely wrong direction. But if you'd asked me this a week ago, I wouldn't have believed the amount of stuff that's happened in the case of a week. It just seemed a bit of a coincidence with how it's all working.
Absolutely, and hopefully it continues. I'd love to get some more news about this and some official word on the plans, and some more documentaries. Honestly, they have an incredible library of sports documentaries built up through the ESPN through all the years. Start bringing them over.
Yeah, and also as well, it's got to be easy entertainment for them to add, isn't it? It's got to be just in general, just the idea of getting this kind of it's not for kids. It's not in get this stuff in there. I know you could be saying, well, if I want this, I'd go into ESPN. Yeah, it is. I totally understand that, but Disney Plus has to grow. It can't stay as it is. With all this competition, it just can't stay in baby mode in the US forever. It literally can't, because other things are going to start. They're all going to start hitting that. As all these different streaming services are battering, and also as well, you can't have the rest of the world all doing something and then just the US kind of sitting up here doing its own little thing indefinitely. At some point, yeah.
I'm sure I could find plenty of people who would disagree with that notion.
Well, there's a lot. There's a lot.
There is a lot, but honestly, I think the metrics probably show you get the Hulu content in, or the Star content, and the retention rates stay up, the churn rate goes down. There will be people complaining because they want Disney Plus to be a specific way, but it does seem like you grow more than you lose, and that's ultimately the only thing that really makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, we get I get comments and stuff. We get a lot, on YouTube, on social media, and on like our Facebook group of some people wanting it just to stay. They're like, "Well, I can put my kid in front of it." It's like, yeah, but what other streaming services do that? Nobody else is doing that system, and it's gonna be interesting. It's definitely gonna be interesting to see how this plays out. But yeah, so keep an eye out. We might not hear anything for months. We might not hear anything for years, but something's happening. Something's moving around. It'll be interesting if we start getting more ESPN stuff dropping weekly, or if it's just a one-off for the Super Bowl. Yeah, but yeah, we're gonna have to take a punt on that one.
Nicely. Either way, getting some more content on there would fill in some of those gaps that we were talking about in the previous what's coming to Disney Plus recaps for like February, and we'll be talking March soon enough. And it's like, yeah, there's 2 things dropping this week. Now, well, if they can start putting some sports documentaries, it adds that little bit more content, which makes it feel a little more meatier.
Yes. Also, this past week, Bob Iger was speaking at with New York Times, and he did an interview. It was actually really interesting. It was about 50 minutes long. He talked about a number of different subjects. One of the things he talked about was the launch of Disney Plus, and one of the things they decided was, he said he woke up one day and was like, Also, I'm just going to read this here to you. So he said, we were selling all the, or licensing all this stuff to Netflix and all the rest of it. And I woke up one day and thought, we're basically selling nuclear weapons technology to a third world country, and now they're using it against us. That's literally what I said. So we decided at the time that we would stop licensing to Netflix and do it ourselves. And it resulted in a substantial decrease in our revenue because we weaned ourselves off all of that licensing, but it thrust us into a business that is the most compelling growth engine in the media today. I mean, when you got Bob Iger, and now he's not part of Disney, he doesn't. He was being a little bit polite with some of the things he was saying, but he's off the leash a little bit. And I've just thought, it's like, wow, comparing it to literally here's nuclear weapons and you're using it against us. I thought that's quite powerful wording, isn't it?
I'd say it's a bit sensationalist wording, to be honest. But I read that quote and like there's a bit of an order of magnitude difference between these scenarios here, but we get what you're going for. And it's certainly something that a lot of companies have been looking at over the last, let's say, decade. Give or take, at least ever since Netflix started streaming, where we saw this explosion of other services coming out of it, and people going, well, why am I selling my product to Netflix when I could just make it myself and distribute it and not have to pay those fees and not have to give Netflix their chunk, and I can have my own. Of course, as many companies, including Disney, have found out, you end up paying those fees anyway in other ways, because now you control the infrastructure and all that. But it does give them a lot more control over it. And I can see where Bob Iger was coming from with this. And it explains the thought process pretty well.
Yeah. Another thing he brought up during the event, or during this thing, is he said that basically COVID really had a massive impact on how the streaming services grew. He said it accelerated a change in consumer behavior, which is that pre-COVID, there was a growth in these streaming services, but what COVID did is it forced people to stay in, and the people still wanted to be entertained, so they figured out how to use basically apps. They got really comfortable with it. Not only did they like it, they discovered that there was huge choice. There's a tremendous amount of quality for everyone. The good side for this is because of the technology, it allows more distribution and more consumption of the industry. And I can't have, it's like that kind of thing. Like, yeah, before the pandemic, we knew what this, we were using Disney Plus, Netflix, all the rest of it. But how many people weren't that found it? I mean, how many, like, I know, like, with my parents and my in-laws and stuff, there was a kind of thing of like, I think, yeah, like Dad, I logged him into Disney Plus. I think like with my in-laws, we got them in on Netflix. It was that kind of thing of like, you're at home. You need to watch it. Why don't you try this out? And I would be, you would be saying to people, like to my parents, and so they're a different generation, and we were all having, group chats and stuff saying, oh, we've been watching, Tiger King on Netflix. Watch that, because we were all just at home all day. It was like we couldn't go anywhere. We weren't going to work. We were, and it was like, and I'm just looking at like my friends and family and like of how much we were discussing shows that I don't know if, it made everyone step out their way out of the things, and completely can understand how that growth just exploded and then again, we're coming to the end of it and people have changed habits. We've had 2 years of this. It's like, well, yeah, I don't really need, you've got used to it.
You've gotten used to it. You've gotten used to the immediacy of it, not having to set your DVR or anything like that. My mom at least transitioned quite a bit to Netflix. I've mentioned it plenty of times. Her viewing habits have been interesting to watch, and it caused everything to accelerate. We've already been seeing the change from traditional linear TV to streaming, and COVID just it lit an afterburner for how quickly. And I do occasionally wonder, we thought a lot about shows like Tiger King and The Queen's Gambit and Squid Games and things like that, and would they have found quite as much success in normal situations, or did they find a lot of it because people were just so hungry for content that they were finding these things? And then, of course, these being quality content, the word of mouth just caused it to spread like a wildfire.
Well, I know, like with Tiger King, that was definitely like a documentary like that probably would have caught attention because it was quite crazy. But obviously, that thing of like so many of us were locked in for the very first time ever. You know, it's like, right, do not go out. You're only allowed to go out to exercise. Was like, you know, some people were like, we'd never sat at home so long, and suddenly, you know, had that extra time. And yeah, like Bob said, you know, people got used to the technology, but also tried stuff out that maybe they never would have done. Because they had that time and they maybe had that patience a little bit more, going, well, I can try this out, I'll try that out, it doesn't matter, I've got nothing to do. And yeah, it's just accelerated it. I mean, obviously we're coming to that thing of, you know, with us changing the pandemic and stuff of how it's working, you know, we are, you know, habits have changed and it will slow down because there was a massive, I mean, Disney Plus literally launched like here in the Europe like 2 weeks or like a week after the lockdown. You know, it was the perfect time to get the lockdown, you know, for a launch. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to just sort of hear, you know, and he's gone, and he's, you know, he's been very open about like how it's changed, and also how Disney Plus has to change, because he's, you know, he's been quite open about the fact of they're going to make some changes. They have to make some changes because it's all changed since they came up with this idea, you know, 5-6 years ago about Disney Plus.
Yeah, and while he is saying that they do need to continue changing and they need to continue adapting and recognizing that the world of media has changed very significantly in the last 2 years, they also it is also worth pointing out that Disney did pivot very well on this as well, because they could have gone into this and said, okay, we launched Disney Plus and now COVID's happening. Well, Disney Plus is there that people can watch The Mandalorian, they can watch, you know, Jeff Goldblum and things like that. But they did recognize that this was an opportunity for them to add things, and they put Frozen 2 on there right away. They put Onwards right away, which we all know they would not have done. But they wanted to give people an incentive. They wanted to give people a reason to stick with Disney Plus. And then we saw it all through last year of movies coming to Disney Plus far faster than we expected them ever to come to it.
Yeah.
Some of them skipping regular theatrical engagement entirely in favor of just dropping out. I'm not even talking about like Premiere Access. I'm talking about like Luca and the various Pixar movies.
Well, I'm going to bring up here now, Encanto. It got revealed by Nielsen charts. I mean, in its second, within like the first week it was on there, you know, it was watched by more people than the Netflix movie Don't Look Up. It's had on huge numbers between Christmas and New Year on Disney Plus, the #1 movie on streaming in the US. And it's like, you know, because it was out 30 days and it's exploded. You know, we don't talk about Bruno is #1 for us here in the UK on our music charts. Disney's never been #1 in the music charts. And I think the Under Pressure one is coming up as well. It's blown up since it's been on Disney Plus because it's got on there quicker, and they very quickly found out kids shows dominate streaming, and Disney are the prime company for this. And I know everyone, you know, they're like, Pixar keeps getting put on this. Like, Disney go, it's going on there because it's making us a ton of money.
Well, to be fair, they would make a ton more money if it did go to theaters, but it gets them a lot of positive feedback, a lot of very good word of mouth. Now, of course, Encanto is not Pixar. Encanto was regular Disney Studio Animations, and even that's still getting them a lot of good word of mouth. That did have a theatrical release first, but
I mean, I think in some ways, like you say, it has been amazing of how Disney really pivoted. Maybe not quite. I mean, it has shown that their system of being a little bit more picky worked better than HBO's plan. You know, Warner's, because that kind of backfired completely.
Yeah, they also had the problem where when they launched HBO Max, they had the DC Universe app going as well. So a lot of the content that you really would have wanted on the HBO Max, like a lot of the DC animated movies, a lot of the DC television shows weren't on HBO Max because they were in the DC Universe. Now they've started to break that down. I think like the Doom Patrol and stuff like that, they're launching on HBO Max, and it's helped quite a bit. But they, much like Disney, fragmented their own base by having these two different apps competing with each other. But I think they also made some interesting choices with the movie releases. Now, obviously, they've backed off on that since you know, the restrictions are kind of going out. But when you had things like Dune launching on here, or I can't even remember what the other movies are.
The King Kong one was one.
Oh, the King Kong. That's right. The Godzilla versus Kong, things like that. Those are premium, top quality movies. The things that at the box office you would expect to make several $100 million at a minimum. And I think it did get them a lot of good press by having those on HBO Max day and date. Now, they annoyed a lot of directors, but people at home who couldn't get to the theaters definitely appreciated having top quality content.
And HBO managed to get a lot of, they did manage to get a big boost in subscribers with doing that. Peacock went a little bit differently. They just announced, they made a loss on Peacock, and they've not really been able to fire up on all cylinders the same way. But yeah, no, it's just been an interesting thing with this whole launch of all these streaming services, but they keep changing. It looks like HBO Max and Discovery might go through in the summer of this year. So by the end of the year, those two are going to look like they're likely to end up merging in together. Again, just more consolidation, making each app stronger with more content.
Yeah, it's this expansion and retraction period, because we had, for a long time, we had just Netflix, and then we had just Netflix and Hulu, and then we had Peacock and Discovery and Disney Plus and HBO Max and all of them. And now that they've all expanded out, they're retracting back into just these core services.
It's funny because I was having a discussion with my wife this morning when we were driving over to the beach, and it was that kind of thing of, I was saying about this thing, and she goes, "Well, you can't subscribe to them all. You can't, it's just not normal. People might subscribe to 3 or 4, but you're not going to go into 6, 7, or 8. So you are going to see a big shift, and I'm sure a lot of these smaller little ones are all getting slapped up. But there we go. So that's kind of the news portion of this week. We're going to do some reviews now. So we're going to start off with the Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild, which was added to Disney Plus in a number of countries: the US, Latin America, Canada, right across, I think Hong Kong and Asia got it as well. But in Europe and in Australia, it's coming on the 25th of March. So just be aware of that one. But I have seen it. My review went up yesterday morning on the website, and now we're going to talk about it now. But James, did you watch it this weekend?
I did. I watched it on Friday. It certainly was a movie. Yes. I mean, it's not a bad movie, but it's very clearly aimed at a very young audience. I'd say the range for this is probably between 7 and 12, and I might be being generous at that point.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. Me and my wife, we watched this one, and it was a bit on the lines of, as a movie, it was so generic, so average. Nothing really. The story was dull. It is the kind of thing of, this is what I would have referred to as a straight-to-video movie. This was a cheap version of it. Only Simon Pegg came back. None of the other voices came back. The animation was all over the place. One minute I'm there going, well, that actually animation looks pretty good. The fur and the stuff looks all right. And then the next minute, oh, the background doesn't even look like it matches up with what you're watching. So that bugged me. I also got really bugged with the concept that the main dinosaur villain is the size of a squirrel. If the weasel and the possums are fighting a dinosaur that isn't any bigger than them, it's like, well, that's not a dinosaur. That's just a lizard.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be a triceratops, or at least from that family. They're not small.
And then it's like, and then I was thinking, he's got all these dinosaurs working for him, and then it's dawned on me, they're the size of those little chicken things in the Jurassic World. That's was it Jurassic Park 2? That's who he's, the little ones running around. And you're talking about T-Rexes, and I don't know. That just really bugged me. He took the dinosaurs and just turned them into lizards.
Except for the T-Rex. The T-Rex was still huge. But the T-Rex wasn't on his side. The T-Rex was on the other side. So, okay. That said, I do think little kids are going to like this. Yeah. The humor is absolutely right up the alley for people in that 8 to 12-ish range. In fact, there was points of the movie where I'm like, I can absolutely hear my little niece or nephew retelling this story to me and retelling the jokes, because it's that kind of joke that, I could even hear it in the cadence of how the kids would tell it. And just I think if you've got a young kid, they will enjoy it. You will be bored out of your mind. That's the problem. Unlike, say, Pixar, which normally has humor for both adults and children, this is very strictly a kids movie.
Honestly, if you haven't watched this, or if you've not watched this, go watch just Dawn of the Dinosaurs. It's just a much better movie. It's just a much better. It's hard. It is like the kind of thing. This is. It's like I kind of got like when I think I gave it like 2 or 2.5 out of 5 because it's just so average. It just there was nothing here of just like that was exciting. Some of the characters just made no sense. I mean, they introduced that girl. I don't even know. I think she's a skunk, and it was just like
she's not a skunk, and her name is Z because she said it like 30 bajillion times.
Well, she's a skunk because she did smell.
No, they had that whole thing when she was first introduced. I can't remember what species this is, but it's an old variant of skunks, and she had a different color pattern as well.
It was just a bit along the lines of, why we didn't need her. It was just like, we got a group together, and because I know it's the whole thing of like Buck having to ask for help from a girl, to help symbolize, and it was like, but it was just a pointless character that just got added just to bulk out the film a bit. I don't know. It would have been maybe, and also the possums are just not a very likable characters, are they?
Well, that's the core problem with the movie. I think it's a movie about two very dumb characters. Literally, they're just very stupid, and it is very difficult to write an interesting story about stupid characters. Now, you can think of a couple off the top of your head probably that have held up over a couple decades, but more often than not, when you tell a story about idiots, the movie is just not entertaining at all.
No. So that's the Ice Age Adventures. If you're an adult, don't bother. Just watch some of the other Ice Age ones. Kids are gonna like it because it's basic and simple, but this one's not got. I can't see this one having long legs. And if they're kids, they're probably going to end up going back to the originals eventually anyway. But yeah, so that one was that one. So we watched that one. Right, so let's now talk about it. Let's shift gears very, very, very differently. So now I'm going to talk about Pam and Tommy. So this is a brand new series. It's coming to Hulu in the United States on Wednesday with 3 episodes. It's also coming to Star Plus in Latin America with 3 episodes, and on Disney Plus here in the UK, Canada, Australia, and around the world. It's going to be on there. So this brand new series, and then you're going to have new episodes dropping weekly. So I have seen the whole series. So I've got to be. This was one of I would say one of the most shocking series I've seen for a while, but also an extremely good series. This is a very, very interesting one. So let's take the whole aspect of the general thing is Pam and Tommy's sex tape gets stolen. And it's the aftermath of what happens with that, with the legal cases, what's happening within like the porn industry, how that gets adapted. Primarily is what it's about the relationship of what it causes for them between the two characters, what it causes for the person that stole the tape. There's a whole thing as well. There's a really awkward scene where like Pamela Anderson is being, she's basically having to go through. Can't think of it. She's basically having to confirm that every scene she's in with the tape is her. They don't call Tommy into it, and they sort of zone in on the idea that that she sewed herself in like Playboy, so therefore this tape shouldn't be a problem. And it's like that thing of like where does the consent come into this, and the differences for men and women, how it affects her career, the impact it has on the release of Barbed Wire, and like what her dreams are. There's a miscarriage scene in here. There's also whole legal issues of what's going on, and like one of the episodes, the second episode in, is all about just like them getting together, how they got together, their relationship, basically them making the tape. So that's like episode 2 is the real real explicit one. That's the one with where they're basically doing it. There's still a lot of they do they use the camera stuff a little bit. There's only one. There was a scene in here that is literally the most bizarre scene in the world with sort of Sebastian Stan playing Tommy talking to his penis. It's just like literally we're talking here at this point. It's about as CG as Sausage Party. It is. We're in this zone of it is bonkers. The good thing, I think Disney are making a good decision with releasing 3 episodes at once, because you can watch the first episode, which is really just about why the guy stole the tape, because Tommy's just awful to him. We get the second episode, which is them making the tape, and then the third one is about them finding out about the tape when it gets out there. And in later episodes, just watching them dealing with the internet, because they didn't know what the internet was. The concept of going, how does a website work? How do you get on it? Can you take this down? Can you delete this? Then having to go to a library, an internet cafe to go on, because nobody knew what the internet was. You got a whole lot of issues with like the newspapers not running the story because they don't think, and like the Jay Leno show not running the stories because it's an internet. They don't know what the internet is. It's so weird looking back on it now. Yes, like 17 years later, of like not really, of like how impact the internet had on it. It's a really incredible series. It is I think it's NC-17, so it's an 18 certificate here in the UK. It is explicit. There's only really that one episode that's really like sexual. You'll get, and it's weird to say, but you'll have scenes where they're walking through like a porn office, so there'll be like people having sex in the background, but it's off in the background, like and it is a really strange, and it is such a weird, strange movie. It's not comfortable viewing at all, but I'm going to be honest, it is a really, really it's an interesting story. The development between the characters, the legal issues, the aftermath of it, the effect that it has on them all, the arguments between them all. I mean, Pam and Tommy, the actual, for Sebastian Stan, Lily James is just unrecognizable in this one, with the amount of makeup and prosthetics that she goes through. It is, honestly, and I've got to say this: if you watch it, don't watch it with your kids around, but at least give it a go. Don't just write it off. That second episode is, like I said, just be wary that it is it's very racy. But once you get past that, it then goes back to what like the first episode's like. So if you like the first episode, that's what the rest of the series is. It is, honestly, it is going to be people are going to love it. There is going to be a reaction to it. You've already seen it on social media of people kind of like going, why is this on Disney? Like, well, we've got The Walking Dead and we've got other shows. It's just, this is the first show that's really pushing that boundary of what's on Disney Plus. Here in the UK and Canada and stuff. It is honestly a really good series, and it'll be rolling out. But I'm not going to talk about it for the next 8 weeks, because it's that kind of thing. It doesn't really lean in on that. But honestly, it is a fantastic series. It was not what I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting. But yeah, it was different, and it's certainly a different thing for Disney Plus here in the UK. I can assure you. Just the way they're even marketing it, it's just pushing that boundaries on what Disney Plus is, which I wanted to bring in after we've done this, where a discussion before we go on to the Boba Fett of why they're doing this new campaign, which I think links up with this series.
Yeah, so. Yeah. I have not seen it yet. I might give some thoughts on it next week when the first 3 episodes come available here. It is always interesting to see that difference between how people react to hyper violent shows like The Walking Dead, and then hyper sexualized shows like this one. Is like they should be in the same category, or even the violence should be in like a more like restrictive category, but we always treat the sexualized ones as higher. Even in Europe, where generally it's more acceptable or more open about things, you still like
I mean, it's that kind of thing. If they're not they're not doing a scene by scene recreation of the tape. They're not. It's not that level. It's literally like a montage kind of thing, and it's kind of done. But it's certainly a series that is going to grab some attention. I know I ended up binging it over like 3 days. I know we watched a couple episodes and like, right, I've got to get through it for the review. And it was like, I did like 4 episodes back to back because it was just like, okay, I want to know what happens. It was, and doesn't happen very often for me. So it was like, that's just the story element of, you're not talking, there's just so much about this. Seth Rogen is great in it. Now, I don't think I've ever said he's good in anything I've ever seen him in, but he actually comes in here. You feel sympathy for all of them. You really feel it's the acting in it is great. This one is really going to push the boundaries of, and I'm sure there's a lot. I mean, all the trades, everyone that came out with a review when the embargo broke on Wednesday, they all thought the same as me. It was amazing and I had people messaging me saying like, this is getting like rave reviews, which and if there's going to be some people that aren't going to like it, and they feel like it, but this is a really good series.
And I would say, if you kind of want an idea of what it's going to be like, check out I, Tonya, the movie from a couple of years ago, because it's by the same creative team, and as near as I can tell from the trailers, it's got the same kind of tone to it, although this is much more explicit than I, Tonya was.
Honestly, definitely. I mean, watch that first episode. See how if you get to the end of that first episode and you feel like this is interesting. I mean, primarily it's about, like I say, Seth Rogen's character, but there's not really any sex stuff at all in the first episode. It's the second episode where, as I said, they recreate it, but it's like them running around trying to sell the tape and trying to get rid of the tape and trying to work out how to sell it and selling VHSs through the mail and using it's kind of interesting looking back on it as well from like the internet point of view of how much it's changed, how much entertainment's changed. It is just a good series all around. It's just like I said, a little bit explicit, especially in episode 2. And that
moving on.
That leads on to this is where I wanted to kind of bring into. So here in the UK, they're launching a brand new trailer, and it's called The House of Disney Plus. So this is a new trailer, which basically is all about kind of giving us things that you'd expect on Disney Plus and things that you wouldn't. So how this is you're getting like a trailer which shows you Pixar's Toy Story, which then leads straight into a scene then with them recreating The Kingsman. And then it flips over to like the Book of Boba Fett, and then it flips to the Walking Dead. And it's all about that kind of flip between, like what you'd expect and what you wouldn't expect from Disney Plus. And they're going to be running a campaign right across Europe and beyond. And it is really an interesting idea of leaning in on the idea of like what, that preconceived notion of what Disney Plus is internationally and what it actually has got on there. And, and I thought that like watching the trailer was good. There's advertising. I've seen some adverts on websites. There's also advertising in supermarkets, which basically pushing the Boba Fett and Walking Dead, because here in the UK we're getting new episodes later next month. And I really like in this whole kind of what you'd expect and what you wouldn't, and really leaning in on that idea of that Disney Plus is, like with Pam and Tommy, not what you're expecting to see on Disney Plus.
Yeah, we shared some of those ads last week too, and I think it's a really good ad campaign. It's simple, straightforward, and catches your attention.
Yeah, but I just thought that kind of leaned in, I think, like I said, on this top Pam and Tommy stuff. And also, it's funny as well with the internet, because obviously it spreads globally. There was a whole thing going, I saw loads and loads of stuff going on, like with the Lizzie McGuire pick on. Well, they cancelled Lizzie McGuire, but they're putting Pam and Tommy on Disney Plus. It's like, yeah, but the Disney Plus of 2022 is very different from the Disney Plus of 2019. And it is a change. And yes, I do think, had they made Lizzie McGuire now, things might have been a little bit different. But it's just changed so much. And I think, obviously, as well, like with the American point of view, a lot of Americans aren't familiar. Obviously, if you listen to this podcast, you hear us talking about this all the time. But there is a massive amount of people that have Disney Plus that still think of it as it is in the US, of very simplified, and don't know what's going on internationally.
Yeah, as always, it's important to remember that podcasts like this, or the other podcasts that cover Disney Plus, or even Hulu or Netflix, reach an audience so much smaller than the subscriber base for any of these shows. You've got literally millions of people watching Disney Plus, and while I'm very happy with our numbers and seeing them grow, it's like it's not millions. We're well below a million. So percentage wise, the vast majority of people watching these streaming services aren't really aware of what's going on with them, except what you see in the what's new tab every week, right? And that's true of Netflix and Hulu and HBO Max and all that. Although I do like that HBO Max has the entire tab dedicated to coming soon stuff, which I wish more companies would have.
Yes, it would be nice, but I mean, I don't know if they've updated ours here in the UK yet. They've added Predator and Predator 2, so we're getting them here in the UK in a couple of weeks. Which again, completely just this baffles. It just, like you say, you say the word Predator and stuff coming, and it still gets comments every day, every time I post something like that.
Predator 2, Ice Age, Buck Wild. They go together so well, right?
Yes, and like I say, it is one of those weird things. But let's now shift over to the Book of Boba Fett. So we got, or as I like to call it, the Mandalorian.
Yeah, this was an excellent Mandalorian episode.
Yes, I mean, what did you think of it?
It was a great Mandalorian episode. It's not even really being snarky though, because this is straight up a Mandalorian episode. It's got callbacks to the Mandalorian season. It's got characters that only make sense if you've watched the Mandalorian. Now, I do think it is a perfectly reasonable expectation for Disney to assume that people watching Book of Boba Fett have watched the Mandalorian. Unlike traditional media, it's sitting right there, and there aren't that many episodes. I think the overlap of watchers between Mandalorian and Boba Fett is going to be almost a straight circle if we're doing like a Venn diagram. But that said, this is a Mandalorian episode, and to get ready for season 3 of Mandalorian, you have to watch this episode.
It's just kind of like weird thing, like if we were watching like Hawkeye, and then suddenly we had an entire episode just like dedicated to, I don't know, Ant-Man or something. Just like,
I mean, it'd be like if they did an entire episode dedicated to Kingpin, right?
Yeah.
And not like what you're thinking about where, half the episode is setting up the King. No, the entire episode is the Kingpin, like recapping or visiting characters from the Daredevil series, seeing what Kingpin's been up to since the end of Daredevil. And while I would certainly love to have that episode, just because, I mean, he's such a fun character, and I want more of his content. It's like, this is Boba Fett. Why?
It's amazing the reaction that this episode has had, because it's that kind of thing of like, I mean, like my dad was like, "Oh, this week's was so much better." Just like because and the amount of people are kind of there going, "Oh, you know what was the problem with the Boba Fett show wasn't it? It had Boba Fett in it." And they're just like of everyone just going, "This is what we wanted." It felt like it felt that weird thing of like sliding into your favorite spot on the couch and going, we're back to what the decent stuff of. But I don't know, really such a strong reaction from everyone going, we don't like Boba Fett. We like Mando.
But see, I generally disagree with that interpretation. I know a lot of people have it, but the problem with Boba Fett is not Boba Fett. The problem with Boba Fett is not Fennec. It's not, Black K or anything like that. The problem has been storytelling since the beginning. The storytelling has been the problem. And you can go to the first episode with that whole parkour chase scene. Just like, this is absolutely ridiculous. The idea of it is fine. The execution, not so much. The Vespa chase in episode 3. Again, the idea is not bad. The execution is just, what are you doing? Whereas this episode, almost everything is a step above. One of the first complaints I had with episode 1 of Boba Fett was that Mos Espa felt empty, right? There's not many creatures there, and when they do, it's like old cartoons where you can see Bugs Bunny looking around. It's like, what's he looking for? Well, it's the one thing on the screen that is very clearly not part of the background, right? Because it's painted differently, or Wile E. Coyote. It feels like that, where there's only characters in Mos Espa when we need to interact with the characters. This was completely different, even from that opening scene where he's turning in the bounty and the place feels alive. There are people scattered throughout the entire area. The city feels like it's lived in
Yeah,
up until he goes into the sewers. Then it kind of shifts. But it has things like that, and it's throughout the entire episode where you just feel like it's an actual world, and Boba Fett feels like it's on a set.
Yeah. I was expecting Master Chief to walk in at some point because he doesn't take off his helmet either.
Well,
with
they
the
do have. I mean, that would be a great amount of cross promotional stuff because he does have his own show coming over on. I think it's Paramount Plus, right?
Yeah.
At some point.
It's to me, it was this thing. It worked on so many levels. I love the fact of him just learning how to fight with the. And I love the fact he messed up. He burnt himself because he didn't know how to use it properly, and it almost like having a forced like element of him not knowing how to fight with it. But I also like the fact that they've kind of turned the Mandalorians on him because obviously, like, you've taken your helmet off, or you can't be with us anymore. You've broken our thing. You're out. Which I don't know why it's like, have you taken your helmet off? No, well then get lost. It's like, well, why would you bring that up?
Well, he can't lie. It'd be wrong for him to lie to them, and I appreciate that he did not lie. But they're also very clearly setting up a story for season 3 with him going to Mandalore and doing this pilgrimage, which will be interesting to see how it goes.
And how many people he can fit in his new ship?
You can fit Grogu into the bubble.
Yeah, it's like, I love the idea of them bringing in this Naboo ship, modernizing it for the Mandalorian era, but it's the most completely counterproductive and useless ship for a bounty hunter to go unless there's a storage bay that he can put people in. It's like he needs to be able to carry people. It's his job. It might be fast and get him somewhere, but what does he do with them when he gets them?
Well, apparently he's going to cut off their heads and carry it around in the sack, and he could fit probably a couple of heads into that old astromech dome.
I did love it when he was like, "You can come in warm or you can come in cold."
Yeah, no, it was a lovely callback. But yeah, when they brought out the N1 Naboo starfighter, I was definitely like, this is completely impractical for what he does for a living. It was cool to see, and obviously, I'm sure that the toy makers will be happy that they get to bring out the old N1 molds and make some new toys with that. At least that's what I was thinking about when they were.
Yeah, it was like I listened. It was going, there's a Lego set coming for me, I can see. But yeah, I mean, I like that whole thing. I mean, there's been a lot of talk now of like maybe they should need to get Dallas Bryce Howard to do one of the Star Wars movies. Everyone's going. She's proven herself with 3 episodes of The Mandalorian now. Of like, yeah, she'll be good. There's also that one scene where they did like the flashback of them destroying Mandalore that I just felt like something out of the Terminator.
Oh, no, that was 100% Terminator. You go to the opening scene of Terminator 1 or Terminator 2. That was the Terminator, and that's been the thing with her. Her episode from Mandalorian season 2, like. Had tons of shots in it that were straight from Apollo 13, which of course makes sense because her dad made Apollo 13. But it wasn't just that. Once he gets into the N1 starfighter in this episode and he starts like flying it around, especially once he gets out of Beggar's Canyon and he's going up into space, that's straight out of movies like First Man and The Right Stuff. That whole flying sequence. There are tons of shots of that, which are like Chuck Yeager flying in the F-104 in The Right Stuff, the movie. You can tell she has a love of movies, and she loves throwing in those little homages throughout.
But it works. It works.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm saying this is a good thing. She's not stealing. She's not plagiarizing.
She's influenced.
She's referencing.
But also, it's weird about having nostalgia for the Clone Wars and them using it properly. The whole thing of like using Beggar, doing the pod race and having the scene at the exact same thing with the ramp.
Yeah.
And it was like, I'm like, well, I'm not nostalgic about the Clone Wars at all because I was that much older when it came out. And I was like, wow, they do it. That worked, like, and I like them connecting the dots because it always felt like the two trilogies were so far apart. There wasn't, because there was nothing from the original. Nothing from the sort of the prequels in the original because George decided that everything had to be different to sell more toys. So it always felt disconnected. Whereas like now Disney has pretty much spent the last decade filling in the gaps, trying to blend them together.
That's what the Clone Wars series was. That's what the Rebels series was. Bad Batch, if it continues on past the second season, will probably also continue to fill in the gaps. I mean, it showed the transition from the clone troopers to the regular stormtroopers already. But yeah, my thought was, it's almost too bad that the Rogue Squadron movie already has a director, because that would have been a fantastic movie for her, given the love she has of flight movies, Apollo 13, The Right Stuff, First Man, all things that she's homaging. And then the Terminator scene at the beginning, she knows how to set up a movie. It worked perfectly. It was a great scene.
That few seconds completely sold, just having those droids just going through, clearing the rest of them out after the bombing raids, and seeing that many bombers at once as well, just like thousands of them just bombing a planet. Just so powerful. And I love the whole thing with like them with the X-wings as well, of just like, are you going to go after them? Do you want to fill in the paperwork? No. It's the best episode of the series because it's more Mando. But we will see Mando now in the next 2 episodes of Book of Boba Fett. So things are I think we're definitely going into these last 2 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett. We're in end the game now, where we're going to get some action. We're going to have BK, we're going to have Mando, we're going to have Boba Fett, Fennec, all 4 of them, and probably I don't know who else they might bring in to sort out the syndicate. Which I'm even more excited about this week's episode, because now you're like, oh yeah, Mando's in. You knew. I mean, they were hinting it last week, but this was just like this episode. When it opened up, and they just went all in on him, and that was great. I just loved that.
I mean, hinting at him last week. I mean, we even talked about it last week. It's like hinting at might be a generous interpretation. It's like I think I know where to get people. Mandalorian music.
It would be a bit like it worked. But I loved this episode. Loved it a lot. Best. It felt like I said, being back with Mando was great. Just loved it.
Yeah. The only problem with it, of course, is that it's not. It is completely tonally different from the rest of the series. From the direction to the art design, music, to the sets, the music. It is not a Boba Fett episode. It is Mandalorian season 2.5.
Which is what they said this was.
Yes, which is what they said it was. So it's not like it was false advertising. We have to see, though, now that the remaining Boba Fett episodes will live up to what is set here, because the quality of this episode is so much higher than the other episodes we've got. If it drops back down next week, it's going to be all the more disappointing.
Yeah, and it's like everyone said, it's like the best. That a lot of people have also said, and I kind of agree with that the return of the Mandalorian showed all the problems with the Boba Fett series, because then you take all that away, and it's like, yeah, this is what people have been moaning about, and this episode proves of why people were moaning about it. But nevertheless, so that was the Mandalorian. So we got episode 6 coming up this week. I'm trying to think. I think that's the only big release of the week, because obviously Pam and Tommy is going to be the big one on Wednesday everywhere. But on that note, guys, thank you very much for joining us this week. We'll be back next week with another episode of the podcast. Also, keep an eye out. There will be a special episode. It might either drop this week or the week after, where me, Josh, we get to speak with Mary from one of the biggest Bluey podcasts, and we have a full-on discussion about the success of Bluey, and very different kind of topics to be talking about after Pam and Tommy this week. So there we go.
No matter what you talk about, it's going to be a tone shift, one way or another.
No matter what I talk about. Well, on that note, guys, thank you very much. We'll see you guys soon. Later. I'd like to thank all of our Patreon and YouTube channel members for their support. You can become a member from as little as $2 a month, and you get access to our weekly Q&A and much more.